Anhaga of the Rebbe Marash was L'chatchila Riber. To the extent, if we have time later, I'm going to give over a word from the Rebbe about it, that it has connections with like Boimer. We'll get to it, Linader. We're going to begin learning now, Bezes Hashem, L'schus U'Le'ili Nishmas Miriam Bas Ephraim Za'ev. We're going to learn from a Kuntres that the Rebbe gave us, the Yodei HaKdosha, a Kuntres of Chaf Ches Sivan. This was Tafshin Aleph, and the Rebbe gave us this Kuntres, and this Kuntres has Kama V'Kama Oitzres, many treasures, has Siches, Reshimes, that means Hanachis. What the Rebbe, when the Rebbe came to America in Tafshin Aleph, there was a Kabbalas Panim, and the Rebbe spoke by that Kabbalas Panim Fabrengen, and the things that the Rebbe said there was written down, Nekudas Reinian, and all is included in this Kuntres of Chavches Sivan that was given out Tafshin Nun Aleph, Shnas HaYovel, 50 years since the Rebbe came to America. That day, Chavches Sivan, was the day that the Rebbe went to the Oyel, and this Kuntres was published in honor of the 50th anniversary. It has, in this Kuntres, there's a detailed story of the miraculous escape of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin from the dangers of Europe, and how he came to New York. It was a very interesting, there's a letter over there. You see the handwriting of the Rebbetzin and of the Rebbe, both writing a letter in Russian. To whom? To the Frierdiker Rebbe, telling the Frierdiker Rebbe about their visas, about their permits, that they should be able to go from Marseille and make the trip. And the beginning of most of the letter was written by Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, and on the bottom, Ksav Kodesh of the Rebbe's handwriting, also in Russian, where the Rebbe is wishing a happy Pesach. It was written in Chodesh Adar, and the Rebbe is wishing a happy Pesach. A lot of very, very interesting things in the Kuntres. Whoever has that Kuntres, and it's available also, I'm sure, in Kahas, those who want to buy Kuntres, Chavches, Sivan, Tafshin Nun Aleph. There's also a Reshima over there, like I mentioned, of the Rebbe's Verbrengen that was arranged when he came, the Kabbalas Panim. And then it has a Reshima of all the Rebbe's activities since Tafshin Gimel, as well as a list of all the Rebbe's Sfarim. Then comes in the Kuntres all the Sichos and Maimarim of that date. That means until that date, until Chavches Sivan Tafshin Nun Aleph. And the only Sichos that were put in there in Maimarim, the ones that Rebbe was Magia. Now on that day, Chavches Sivan Tafshin Nun Aleph, the Rebbe went to the Oyel. When he came back from the Oyel, he davened Mincha, said a Sicha, and then proceeded to daven Ma'ariv. The Rebbe was then the Rebbe's schedule was to give out the Kuntresim, but the Gabbai was asked to announce a break, that the Rebbe is not giving out the Kuntresim yet. There's going to be a break because they wanted the Rebbe to have a chance to rest up from standing on his feet for so many hours before beginning giving out the Kuntres of Chav Ches Sivan. They wanted the Rebbe to have a break, to sit down for a little bit, maybe eat something, because giving out the Kuntres will take another few hours. So the Gabbai made an announcement. Part of the announcement was not even true. I'll tell you what he said. The Gabbai announced that since the Kuntresim have not yet arrived from the printing press, there will be a break, a hefsek. Following the hefsaka, the Rebbe will then begin giving out the Kuntres. The truth was that the Kuntresim were already in 77, they already did arrive. But he's trying to find an excuse so that the Rebbe should take a break. Right after the Gabbai made his announcement, the Rebbe said, "Ashtot machna hefsek, but me machna hemshech." Instead of making this break that you want to do, we'll make a continuation. And what did the Rebbe do? The Rebbe said another sicha. The Rebbe said a sicha, not another one. The Rebbe said a sicha, and this sicha was later muga by the Rebbe, which became the sicha of Mikdash Ma'at Beis Zeh Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel. That's that sicha the Rebbe said then. So if anyone thought they're going to be doing the Rebbe a big favor by making a break, they just made it take longer. When the Rebbe finished the sicha, the Rebbe started to give out the Kuntresim. That took quite a few hours. So, what we're going to start with, the Maimer, the first Maimer of this Kuntres, which is on page 253, I think. I'm not sure. The Maimer was said on Shabbos Shlach, Chav Ches Sivan, which was Shabbos from Varchim Chedesh Tammuz, Hey Tavshin Lamed Vav. Later, the Rebbe was Magiyat for Tavshin Mem Ches. The Rebbe was Magiyat, and it came out as a Kuntres, Chav Ches Sivan, Tavshin Mem Ches, like the Rebbe would be Magiyat many Maimarim in those years. And it said on it, Mitzvah Shabbos Kodesh Pasha Shlach, Shnas Hakel, Shnas Tismach. And it came out, L'schus Chav Ches Sivan Tavshin Mem Ches, which was close to 50 years since the Rebbe came with the Rebbetzin to America. Tavshin Nun Aleph made 50 years. So the Rebbe didn't give out the Kuntres then. The Rebbe was Magiyat, and it was printed for everyone to learn. Later was included a Sefer Maimarim Melukat Chelik Beis. Tavshin Nun Aleph, the Rebbe gave it as part of this Kuntres. So we're going to learn the Maimer. The first Maimer that's printed, there's a few Maimarim there. And the first one is Vayishlach Yehoshua. It's not a very long Maimer in Kamus, but the message is a powerful, amazing message, and very empowering for us, because it gives us a whole new dimension of understanding. The whole idea what Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, Perek Yud, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Perek Yud Zayin, all about the avodah, the difference between the avodah of tzaddikim and the Beinani. And that's what we're going to see here. So the Maimer is based on a pasuk in Tanakh, Vayishlach Yehoshua, which is the Haftarah of Parsha Shlach. Parsha Shlach, Moshe Rabbeinu sent Meraglim. And the Eibishter told Moshe, Shlach Lecha Noshim. Says Rashi, what's Shlach Lecha? I'm not commanding you. L'daitcha, if you want, you do it. If you want, you do it. And then the haftarah of that, and then Moshe did send. The haftarah is about the meraglim that Yehoshua sent, and that was al pi tzivui Hashem. The Eibshter commanded Yehoshua to send meraglim. And the Rebbe is going to talk about this. Why Moshe's meraglim were a ladaitcha, up to Moshe's opinion, and the meraglim of Yehoshua was a tzivui. That's the first shaila the Rebbe is going to ask. The second shaila the Rebbe is going to ask, Moshe's meraglim went for 40 days. They went and covered the whole land. All Shiva Umais, from top to bottom. Yeshua's meraglim went only to Yerichai. That was the tzivui. They should go to Yerichai, and by going to Yerichai, through that was considered that they're spying out the whole land. It says somewhere, Yerichai is man'ula shel Eretz Yisrael. It's like the lock, the entrance to Eretz Yisrael. But they were only sent to go to Yerichai. So let's look inside and see why the shaila is, why Moshe's meraglim went to the whole Eretz Yisrael, and Yeshua's meraglim went only to Yerichai. Vayishlach Yehoshua Goimer Shnei Masa meraglim Goimer Shnayim Anoshim meraglim. Moshe sent 12. Yeshua sent only 2. Look at the Torah on these words, Vayishlach Yehoshua. It explains over there, Hachiluk bei meraglim, hameraglim sheshalach Yehoshua, hameraglim sheshalach Moshe. What's the difference between the meraglim that Yehoshua sent compared to the meraglim that Moshe sent? 2 differences. Number 1, Tibra meraglim sheshalach Moshe ksiv shlach lecha ledaitcha. By Moshe Rabbeinu it says the word lecha. Rashi means what? Ledaitcha. It's up to your opinion. Ani einoi mitzavelach. I am not commanding you to do so. You want, you could send. Mashenkin shiluach hameraglim di Yehoshua, which is not so the case about the spies of Yehoshua. It wasn't based on Yeshua's opinion. Ella al pitzivei Hashem. Hashem commanded. So that's a big difference between Moshe's meraglim and Yeshua's. Another shaila, another chilik, v'oit chiluk. The meraglim sheshalach Yehoshua hayu rak li'Yerichai. The meraglim that Yehoshua sent was only for Yerichai. Man'ula shel Eretz Yisrael. That's the entrance to the whole Eretz Yisrael. Val Yedei Zeh Taru is Kol Haaretz. By going to Yerichai, that was considered that they're searching the whole land. If we take a look in number 5 in the Haaretz, the Rebbe said, what does it mean in the whole land? They only went to Yerichai, but by doing so, it was considered that they're being meragel the whole land, and the Rebbe brings kemuvan bepashtus. Let's look at number 5. Kemuvan bepashtus, like it's understood bepashtus, and also lehoyer gam Yehoshua sham. Take a look in Yeshua, in Pasuk Gimel. It says lachper es kol haaretz bo, that they came to search out the entire land. V'zeu gam. This is also the meaning when it says in the Pasuk lechu u'ra'u es haaretz ve'es Yerichai. Yeshua said, go check out the land and Yerichai. And then it says Roas Haaretz. And what is the pshat? Al Yedei Esirichai. When Yeshua said L'chu Ru'as Haaretz Ve'esirichai, means you want to get to see the whole land, go to the Yerichai, and that will accomplish it. So that's number 5, telling us that it means that even though they went physically to Yerichai, Al Yedei Zeh, they went through the whole land. So Meraglim Yeshua went only to Yerichai. Mashenk in a Meraglim Sheshalach Moshe Holchu B'chol Haaretz La'arko L'Rachba. They went all over the place. Its width, its length. Now comes the Shiloh. Why does the Torah tell us? Titus Miloshen Eira. Why are we learning a story that happened thousands of years ago? It's in order we should learn something in Avodas Hashem. Anything that's happening that happened in the times of Moshe or Yeshua or any things that Torah tells us, Miloshen Eira, but we're not going into the land now. Of course, Mashiach Tzidkenu is coming to take us. But this Avodah of Meraglim, where does it fit in Avodas Hashem? To understand the reason of the difference between both missions of Meraglim, of Moshe and Yeshua, even though both of them, the Chayda, came for the same purpose, to spy out the land, but there is a difference between the two. What's the idea of kibush haaretz beruchnius? Who whenever you cut, the Torah gives us something, there is an inyan in ruchnius that we have to do, a kibush haaretz. It's a nitzchi, nitzchi for every generation. And look at number 7, the ha'ara. He brings in the tzemach tzedek, noida Torah, the vadai pashut shebechinas nesinas ha'aretz the Yisrael yeshnoi gam ata beruchnius. That for sure, the idea of giving us the land, giving the Yidden the land, it's also now taking place beruchnius. What does that mean? We have to conquer the land. The cholech had vechad mi Yisrael tzarich lichbush es kol hakoiches v'hoinyanim the gufay v'nefesh nafshei habahamis. It's our job to conquer our koiches, the seichel and midas, and the inyanim of our guf and our nefesh habahamis, which are in a level of Eretz Canaan, and which means it's yet far from Kedusha, some kelim le'elokus, to turn them into Eretz Yisrael. Like the famous word from the Tzemach Tzedek, Machdo Eretz Yisrael. What we have to do is take our seichel, our midos, our machshava dibur ma'aseh. And as we know, we have 2 sets. The Eibishter gives all of us 2 sets. 1 set of Seichel and Midas for the Nefesh Halakis, along with a set of Levushim, Machshava Dibur Ma'aseh. A 2nd set for the Nefesh Habahamis of Klippa. That there is Machshava Dibur Ma'aseh of Klippa. There's Seichel Midas of Klippa, and it's our job to turn the Nefesh Habahamis into Kedusha, to elevate the Seichel Midas and the Machshava Dibur Ma'aseh of the Nefesh Habahamis to Kedusha, to take Eretz Canaan and turn it into Eretz Yisrael. That's our job. Now the Rebbe is going to apply the 2 things that everyone has, Nefesh Halakis, Nefesh Habahamis, going to split it into two parts. There's Seichel and Midas, that's Koiches Pnimian. And then there are Levushim, Machshava Dibur Maisa. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, in Pedig Dalid, Va'oid yesh l'chol nefesh, shloisha levushim, machshava dibur maisa. Each nefesh has machshava dibur maisa. That's levushim. Then every person gets a set of koiches, the seichel and the midas, the esa koiches. And Pedig Gimel, shenishtal shlomeim from the esa tzvidas. That everyone gets. The avodah that a yid has, he has two kinds of avodah. One avodah is yirichai. What's yirichai? That's the levushim. As the Rebbe is soon going to explain, what's the connection between yirichai and the levushim of machshava dibur maisa. One avodah we have is machshava dibur maisa, represented by the inyan of yirichai. That's our job. Control our machshavas, control our dibur, control our maisa, and transfer from Eretz Canaan, from Nefesh Habamis, to Kedusha. To bring it over, the Nefesh Elokis should win over the Nefesh Habamis. That's one job. Then there's another job, to work on our seichel and our midas. But first, the Rebbe is going to start about the midas, the Sheva midas. To transform our seichel, the Rebbe is going to say later, towards the end of the Maimer, that's avodah of later, of Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoini. We'll get to that later. Right now, the Rebbe introduces the inyan, Arbitin of the midas, to work over our midas, from the Nefesh Habamis, bring them over to Kedusha. What are the midas? Represented by the Sheva Umois of Eretz Canaan. The Sheva midas correspond to the 7 nations of Eretz Canaan. Who sent spies to Yerichai? Yeshua. Who sent spies to the Sheva Umois, to the whole Eretz Yisrael? Moshe. We're getting a little bit of a picture of what's going on. So Moshe is focusing on the midas, the Sheva midas, that avodah that a yid has, and Yeshua is focusing on Yerichai, which represents the levushim machshava dibur maisa. What connection does Yerichai have with machshava dibur maisa? So let's take a look inside. What's the difference between Yerichai and Klalas Haaretz B'nefesh Adam? Who the Rebbe brings, I see in number 8, Pedig Tes, the Melchama of Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Habamis, is ala guf b'chol ha'ivarav. And what does the Rebbe bring? The Alter Rebbe brings, he says it's compared to 2 kings who want to take over a city. Shekol echad roitze lekavsha. This the Rebbe is bringing when he talks about conquering the koiches and everything from Eretz Canaan and turning it into Eretz Yisrael. The idea of conquering, he says, yeah, that's the lashon of the Alter Rebbe and Pedig Tes. So what's the difference between Yerichai and Klalas Ha'ar? It's the whole land, all 7 umais. The Yerichai who Gimel al-Levushim. Yerichai represents the 3 Levushim, Machshava Dibur Maisa. What is the connection between Yerichai and the Levushim, Machshava Dibur Maisa? Brings the Rebbe based on a Zohar. Ki Yerichai Meloshen Reach. The word Yerichai is Meloshen Reach. What does that have to do? Okay, so it's Reach. What does that have to do with Levushim? So the Rebbe brings from Zohar. Levushim Shayachim l'reach. Levushim are connected to reach. Ukeremez lashon hazoyar. There's a lashon hazoyar. It tells a story over there that there were two tzaddikim who were busy with achnasas kala. They came to a town and they wanted to speak to this little kid, and the kid didn't want to come close to them. And he said, because someone who doesn't learn Krishma, someone who doesn't say Shema, should be separated. They said, how do you know we didn't say Shema? He says, I smell it from your clothing. I smell it from your garments that you did not say yet Krishma, which happened to be true. They were oisik b'mitzvah, potem and a mitzvah, and the Rebbe Marash actually asked, since it's his Yom Haledes, nice to say a word from the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Marash, I think it's in Tafresh Lamed Vav, says, what's a pshat oisik b'mitzvah, potem and a mitzvah? How can you be potem from a mitzvah? Says the Rebbe Marash, it brings what Chassidus brings. Every mitzvah is really koilel in itself, all the other Tafresh Yud Beis mitzvahs in a miniature form. So you're doing a mitzvah achnasas kala, you really are doing Krishma. You're doing all the mitzvahs. That's why oisik b'mitzvah, potem and a mitzvah. It's not that suddenly the mitzvah doesn't exist. You're being mekayim it in a different way through achnasas kala. So then they did do Krishma. So why did the little kid have a taina to them that I smelled from your garments that you didn't say Krishma? And the Rebbe Marash explains, it's all aricha, so you can look into Tafresh Lamed Vav. I think it's Lamed Vav. He says like this. He says, when you learn Krishma, it's not just the mitzvah of Krishma. There are two parts to this. Part number one is the Mekiyam mitzvahs Krishma, and that they were Mekayim because kol ha'isik b'mitzvah pater min ha'mitzvah. That part of it they got taken. There's another part of Krishma that they couldn't do. What was that? Kabbalas oil malchus shemayim, which is part of the mitzvah of Krishma. To be mekabel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem Echad. That they couldn't do because they're busy with achnasas kala. So they got on the checklist, yes, you did the mitzvah of Krishma, of the Kabbalah soil that you gained from it, that they didn't practice that time. That's what the kids smelled. A kol panim from Bereicha, the Levushaychu, that's what the pshat is, that the Levushim represent has the mitzvahs that a person does is niked in the Levushim. So that's what the Rebbe is bringing here, that Levushim or Shayachim l'reach. Ukerem is lashon hazayah b'reach the Levushaychu. That's the inyan of Yerichai. Yerichai represents machshava, dibur, and mais, which are Levushim. Aha. So Yerichai, reach, is connected to Levushim. Which Levushim are we talking about here? Shava, Dibur, and Maisa. So Yeshua sent Meraglim to work on Yerichai, which means our Avodah to work on Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa. Then comes Moshe Rabbeinu, who he sent to the whole Eretz Yisrael. What does that represent in Avodah Sa'adam? Uklal Sa'aretz, Eretz Zayin Amamin, the 7 nations, Hema Midos Sheba Adam. Those represent the Midos by the person. Now we can understand Yeshua sent, which means our Avodah Machshava Dibur Maisa, that was Al Pitzi Hashem. But Moshe's avodah to convert our midos from klipa into kedusha, that is only l'daitcha of Moshe. That's not al pi atzivui. Why not? Why isn't it a tzivui to work on our midas and a tzivui to work on our machshav dibur u'maisa? The Rebbe is going to explain. Sorry. V'zeu ma she'atzivui leYehoshua l'shlech meraglim. The tzivui to Yehoshua to send meraglim hoyoshielchu rak li'irichoi. The tzivui was just go to Yerichai. That was the tzivui, Yerichai. Why? Ki machshava, dibur, u'maisa, heim bereshusei shel adam. Machshava, dibur, u'maisa are bereshusei. Everyone has the possibility, ma'ich ala leiv. You could control your machshava, dibur, u'maisa. V'lachein yesh tzivui. That's why there's a tzivui from Hashem about Yerichai, which means our levushim. Lasur v'livchain, to spy out and to check out and examine as a machshava dibur u'maisa shaloi. She'iyu kulam lavaya. That our machshava, our dibur u'maisa, should be kulam laHashem. And there is shaykh to be a tzivui. Masha ein kain, our midas, you can't make a tzivui out of it. Why not? To work on our midas, to change over our midas, the Alter Rebbe says clearly in Tanya that it's not b'reshusay b'yecholtay of every person to convert his midas from klipa, from nefesh habamis, turn it over to kedusha. That's avodas hatzadikim. The average person, midas koladam, midas habeinini, where we stay with our fagrepta midas, with our coarse midas, we could stay a whole lifetime and not necessarily turn it over to kedusha. It's not necessarily the goal of every yid to turn it over to kedusha. What? Yes, action. Machshava b'poel mamish. Think, yeah, there we do have control. Dibur b'poel mamish, yes, we do have control. Maisa b'poel mamish, we do have control. And that's why there's shaykh to be a tzivui. To go to Yerichai, to our own Yerichai, which means to examine our machshava dibur and maisa, the Eibishter does expect it. No one can say, oh, that's avodas hatzadikim. No, befedish nisht. It's avodah of kol echad ve'echad, shebereshusai u'b'yecholtai, of every yid, lim shoel, to control his machshava, dibur, u'maisa. And that's why Yerichai is a tzivui. Let's take a look about Moshe Rabbeinu, his avodah, in avodas Hashem, to work on our midas. Not everyone is shaykh to ibiker in the midas, to convert and change over the midas, the kedusha. We might be fighting with it a whole lifetime. Like the Alter Rebbe says, ulai lokach nivra. This is our mission in life. It's not so the case, talking about the midas shebelev. Einam b'reshusay shall kol adam. Not everyone has control over it to change it. The tzadikim dafka libam b'reshusam. Dafka tzadikim are able to do so. But average people, why does it say ti tzadik val ti rasha? Why kefal halashon? Why say double? Say be a good boy and don't be a bad boy. Just say be a good boy. It's enough. Alter Rebbe explains, ti tzadik, you should attempt to be a tzaddik to convert your midas. But if it doesn't work, at least al tihi rasha. Don't be a rasha. Don't sin, because you do have control. You're able to control your machshava dibur u'maisa. That's what it says, Al Tiyeh Rasha. At least don't be a Rasha. So not everyone can be like a tzaddik that libam b'reshusam, that they have full full control over their heart, over their midas. V'lachein, b'meraglim sheshalach Moshe, v'alsudas kol haaretz, the meraglim that Moshe sent to check out the land, which in our avodah means livchenas hamidos, to examine our midas, shiu kulam la Hashem, la Havaya, they should be totally for Hashem. Ksiv, what does it say? Shlach lecha l'daitcha. That's already, it could go either way. Ani eini mitzavah. I'm not commanding you such a thing. The Abish is not commanding every yid to do that avodah, converting their midos. Why? Ki avodah the kibush hamidos. Because the avodah of conquering the midos, and the Rebbe puts in parentheses b'shleimus, which gives a feeling like, abisala kenmen, but to have b'shleimus, who dafka al yedei giloi bechinas Moshe. What is giloi bechinas Moshe? We'll get to that in a minute. But it's only an exceptional thing. The eina shava l'chol nefesh. Sometimes there's what's called misguided souls. We get the wrong message of what our goal is. It says in Tanya, it says bechinas Moshe, which is bechinas Hadas, is in every single yid, because Moshe Rabbeinu is mamshech das to all of us. We learned so much about it in Vata Tetzaveh. That's what in us he does, gives us das. And because of this Moshe that everyone has in himself, they can demand certain things of Moshe Rabbeinu. Like it brings in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe fragt a starke kasha. It says in Gemara on the pasuk. It brings a pasuk. Vat Yisrael, Ma Hashem Elikecha shel mi'imach, ki im liyiras Hashem Elikecha. Moshe is saying to the Yidden, has a Chaim. What is Hashem already asking from you? He's only asking you for Yiras Hashem. That's all. Fragt the Gemara, Auto Yira Milsa Zutrasi. Is Yira such a small object? Moshe makes it sound like, I'm only asking you for $10 million. That's all. Only Yira. The Gemara says, how can Moshe say that to the Yidden, which makes it seem like it's such a simple thing? It's not. And for the Gemara, yes. Legabi Moshe milsa zotrasehi. For someone like Moshe, it's very simple. For Moshe to get Yiras Hashem is not a big deal. Period. Gemara geantfit. Fragt the Alter Rebbe, I don't see an answer. Isn't he asking this from Kol Yisrael? It says, Shoyel me'imach ksiv. The Yisrael, V'atam ma Hashem Elikecha shel me'imach. From the Yidden, not from Moshe. So the kasha bleibt, kasha stays. How does it become a milsa zutrasi? Says Alter Rebbe. Yes, that's what the Gemara says. That there is a Moshe, and the Gemara means not it's only Legabi Moshe Rabbeinu. It's easy. Legabi Moshe shebechol echad ve'echad mi Yisrael. Every year has a nitzutz, a spark of Moshe. And from koyach of that spark, it is milsa zutasi. It's reachable, it's attainable, but it takes work. Says the Rebbe here that how can we have kibush hamidos, at least in a way of shleimos? I mean, a little bit seems like the Rebbe put in parentheses the word b'shleimos. That can be only through a gili of Moshe Rabbeinu, and by everyone it's different. No two people alike. So what do we see? Just to sum up what we learned just now, the Rebbe asked two questions. Question number one is the difference between Moshe's Meraglim and Yeshua's Meraglim. Moshe's Meraglim, when he sent them al Pitzivui Hashem. Moshe's Meraglim were L'daitcha, up to Moshe. Yeshua's Meraglim al Pitzivui Hashem. Another difference, Moshe sent to the whole Eretz Yisrael, Yeshua sent only to Yerichai. And the Rebbe explained, yes, because there are two Avodas in Avodas HaAdam. The Avodah, which is similar to Yerichai, Avodah of Machshava Dibur Maisa, that's Al Pitzivui, and that came from Yeshua, Al Pitzivui Hashem, that is expected from everyone, no excuses. I heard that someone once wrote to the Rebbe a letter that he was a Mivtzoim, and he's trying to convince this guy to close his store on Shabbos. And the guy was explaining why he can't, and it's hard for him. And he says that Hashem understands. Hashem understands him. In other words, we're okay. And the Bacher wrote these few words that he quoted, the guy who said, "Ad Eibishter versteht." The Rebbe gave right away an answer. Tell this guy, as the Eibishter versteht nicht. Tell him that the Eibishter does not understand. The Eibishter gave us koiches to control our machshava, dibur, and maisa every moment of the day. And that's why it's al pitzivui Hashem. Yerichai is expected from everyone. Levushim, machshava, dibur, and maisa. No excuses. Good, we're not perfect. And that's what life is all about. Ups and downs. We try, but we shouldn't excuse ourselves. And saying, no, I give up, it's impossible. If it will be impossible, the Eibishter wouldn't give it to us. I once heard from my father a gewaldige Wort. It says, Kikarev elecha adavar ma'od beficha v'lbav chalasosei. That's the aside of the whole Tanya. That what the Eibishter is asking from us, and we see here, what is he asking? Machshava dibur u'maisa says, Karev, and not just Karev ma'od. What is the definition of Karev ma'od? We all know what Karev is, something which is close. Why isn't it enough that Moshe Rabbeinu would say, Ki Karev elecha hadavar beficha v'lbav chalas? Why the word ma'od? So my father explained it to me like this. What's the definition of Karev? When you have two objects and they have to get close to each other. When is it close? When it's a mile apart? No. When it's like a few inches close to each other, that's already close. How about not 3 inches, but 2 inches? That's already Karev. Is there any more that's more Karev? Yeah, 1 inch. We're not by ma'od yet. When is it considered Karev ma'od? When it's a millimeter apart, it's still Karev. If it's a millionth of a millimeter, if they're not touching, and it's still Karev. Moshe Rabbeinu is telling you, it's so close to you. It's mamish like touching. That's Karev ma'od. Extremely close. Not 3 inches away or a mile away, which is also, the Eibishter says, Lo me'eva layamu, lo b'shamayim hi. The Eibishter wants us to do something. He makes it possible. And the Eibishter never, ever gives us a test before he gives us the koyach frier. Before. He gives us the koyach first. And only after he gives us the koyach, Then he says, now do it. It doesn't make sense, even for a human being, to put a person in a room with a piece of wood and say, make a table for me. Doesn't give him a saw, doesn't give him a screwdriver, doesn't give him any tools. You can't just make. So even a human being knows you don't give a person to do a job if he's not cut out for it, if he doesn't have the tools. So he needs the tools. So the Eibusha gives us the tools even before he gives us the job. He never comes beyond our limits. So the Eibusha says, Yitten, I expect from you Yerichai. It's Sivui. Yes, Yerichai you could do. Machshava dibur ma'isa. I can't control my machshava. Who said so? We could. The Eibusha created us in a way that we do have control on the machshava. You cannot think two things simultaneously. You could juggle, think about Aleph and then Beis and back to Aleph, back to Beis, but you can't think about Beis when you're thinking of Aleph. So if a person has a machshava that doesn't belong there, we could chase it out. How? Bring in Beis. Beis comes in, you could think about Aleph. We could control our minds. We could control our machshava. And Dibur, for sure, we have the guards. We have our teeth, our tongue, our lips. We know that what that means. We could control our Dibur. Who says I have to say it? What does Alter Rebbe say in Tanya? What's a skafia? Boilem piv. Shut my mouth. Don't say those words. Unless they're words that are positive, something that's going to inspire a yid, something that's going to make someone feel good. I have a choice. Make the guy feel good. Say good morning, good afternoon, or say, job well done. He didn't do a job well done. Maybe part of it he did. In other words, for Dibur, we do have even easier control than Machshava. And Maisa, action. Since when can a person say, no, I had to do it. I had to give him a slap, or who said so? I had to steal. What kind of had to? I had a temptation. At least you're honest. But the Eibusha gave you the koyach to overcome the temptation. If the Eibusha wouldn't give us the koyach, he wouldn't command us with such a command. He wouldn't give us the nisayon. Fakert, that's one of the reasons of nisyainus. The word nisayon also comes from the lashon neis al haharim. What is neis? A flag. A flag. What is a flag? It demonstrates something. The Eibusha wants this person to know how powerful he is and how loyal he is to Hashem, and he never really demonstrated it enough until he went through this test. So the Eibusha wants the person to know. He wants him to show him a siman. Look how powerful you are. You're able to overcome that test. Wow. Kol hakavod. What a gibur. You came up with the nitzachin. That's the reason. Of course, we don't do it on our own. Every nisayim we go through is a nes. Nisayim lashon nes. We could try to run away from it if it comes our way. That's why nisayim also malashon nos, vayonos, avegalofin. But it's going to come back because the Eibusha has a good reason for it. Wants us. Of course, we don't have to go look for nisyanis. We beg Hashem, al t'v'yeinu l'dei nisayin. David HaMelech said, "B'chaneini Hashem v'naseini." Check me out, test me. It didn't bring to the best results. We have to ask Hashem, please don't give me any nisyonis. I don't want any nisyonis. We're begging Hashem, al tivienu l'dei nisayon. That's what we're asking Hashem. But if it does come our way, we should know there is one sole purpose. It's for a good reason. That number one, we should know we have the kaiches. Number two, to show us how precious we are. We can walk away with a smile. This is something that the Eibishter gives us. Ein chacham kabal anisayin. We can learn about it in Maimarim, in Siches. We can be flooded with Siches. When you go through an Nisayin, you know what it's all about. But again, lafum gam lashichana. According to the strength of the camel, that's the kind of load you put onto the camel. And this Eibush expects from everyone, machshava, dibur, maisa, which is represented, trinyum v'yerichai, that's something that everyone can do. And that's why there is a tzivui to Yehoshua, and which means to every single yid, every generation, a tzivui, go to Yerichai, examine it, and you can take control of machshava dibur u'maisa. Masha ein kain, Moshe Rabbeinu, the avodah of conquering the seven umos, the seven midos, we can subdue it, but we cannot convert it yet, because that's avodah tzaddikim. What could we do? Learn the Prakim and Tanya, Perek Yud Beis, Va'abeinini, invited, or Perek Yud Daled, Midas Kol Adam, Midas Abeini, Midas Kol Adam, V'acharei Kol Adam Yimshech. What is a Beinini? The Alter Rebbe says clear. He has full control on Machshava, Dibur, Maisa, the Levushim. Does he have any control on his Midas? Zero. That means the biggest taivas can come to him. But what does he do when the taiva comes, when the machshava comes? He chases it out. He has full control in the action of whether it's machshava, dibur, or maisa. The midos of Beinani, they are still in their full koiches, just like by a Rasha. That's why he's called a Beinani. Because on one side he's like a tzaddik. He never is over Avedis. He has full control, machshav dibur u'maisa. He's also compared to a Rasha, that he has such fadar ben midas, such disgusting midas, and such taivas. But who put it there? The Eibishter put it there. For what? Like it says in Tanya, like the Moshel HaZaynish B'Zeir HaKadosh, to give schar for the avodah that we do. And that's why the Rebbe explains that the avodah of Yehoshua and every yid of Yerichai, you could be a tzivui. Masha'enk in the avodah of Moshe Rabbeinu, of to conquer the seven midos, to transform from Eretz Canaan to make it into Eretz Yisrael, which means to transform the midas of Nefesh Abamis into Kedusha, to become like the midas Nefesh Alakis. Says Rashbira, Isi b'nei Aliyah v'eimu atim. Only a few, only tzaddikim can do so. The average person has a TV to work on action, Maisa b'poyel. Hey, Yosef is the Rebbe Marash's Yom Holedes. I like to finish with a story of when the Rebbe Marash was a young boy. A group of Chassidim were waiting to go into Yechidus to the Tzemach Tzedek. And Tzemach Tzedek notified them that he's canceling Yechidus for today, maybe tomorrow. There was one Chassid who had a very urgent matter, mamash emergency. He had to go in. And when he heard no Yechidus, he went into the corner and he started to cry. Little Shmuel, who was 6 years old then, the Rebbe Maharash, when he was only 6 years old, he was hanging out between those Chassidim. And he sees this guy crying. What is he going to do? He goes over and he asks him, why are you crying? You know, a little kid wants to help. The Chassid at first wanted to ignore him. Was a little kid bothering me? But then the kid realized, the Chassid realized, it's Shmuel, the Rebbe's son. So he thought, if I can't get to speak to the Rebbe, I'll tell my story to this little boy, and hopefully he'll repeat it to his father, the Tzemach Tzedek. Like this, Tzemach Tzedek will know what I'm going through. So he sat down and told him like this. He says, I am the owner of a factory that makes pots for cooking. And by the name of my pots went all over, everyone knew it's the best pots. So I had a lot of parnasa. There was a big army base close to my factory. And the officer came one day to check out the quality of my pots, was so impressed, he bought a bunch of them for his army base. They were so satisfied that they notified the headquarters of all the army bases of Russia how good the pots are. They recommended that we should all buy my pots. So the entire Russian army, all the Russian bases started to order by me pots. And I had to hire many more workers. What happened was, I made a deal with the Russian army. They should bring me the metal, the material, and I'll turn them into pots. And they only have to pay me for the labor. Because for me to buy the metal is very expensive. And they accepted it. So they brought, let's say, 1,000 pounds of the precious metal, and I turned it into pots. And they would weigh it when they brought the metal, and they weighed it again when it was turned into pots. And they saw that the figures match. After a couple of times of doing such a deal, they decided not to weigh the pots. They trusted me. And for many, many times that they brought the metal, they only weighed it at the beginning, but not when the pots were ready. One day, they decided to weigh the pots. When they weighed it, they saw it was off tremendously. Like, let's say it was supposed to be 1,000 pounds, it was only 900. And they right away arrested me, brought me to the police station, and gave me a written summons. I have to appear before the Russian army's court in 2 days. So I came running here to Lubavitch to see your father, the Tzemach Tzedek, to get out of this problem. And then I hear that the Rebbe is not taking anyone. And I have to leave today because tomorrow I have to go to court. Little Shmuel heard the whole story. And he says, how was it missing? He says, my workers noticed, they told me that there were some ganavim, some thieves amongst my workers. And they would make the pots thinner in order to keep the extra metal for themselves, and they'll sell it and make money. And I got into trouble. Whatever I tried to tell the people, the police, they didn't want to hear. Shmuel said to him, do you have 3 ruble? The chassid thought, the Rebbe's son is asking me for 3 ruble. Okay, he gave him 3 ruble. And Shmuel says to him, now you can go home. I guarantee everything will be all right, Bezos Hashem. And he left. The next day he comes to court. The prosecutor enumerates the sins and says what he did, how he went against the government, he cheated the government, and he should get prison, she gets Siberia. Then the Yid's lawyer said to the judge, how about weighing the pots? Let's weigh it and see. You're just taking their word for it. And the judge says, go bring the pots and a scale. And they weighed it. And it turned out to weigh more than 1,000 pounds. It means not only it didn't weigh 900, it weighed more than 1,000. The judge freed the chassid right away and even gave a fine to the prosecutors that they have to give money to the chassid for causing him the pain. And the chassid went home, came straight to the Tzemach Tzedek. Thank you, Rebbe, for the miracle. The Rebbe says, which miracle? About the pots. I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me what you're talking about. And he tells him the whole story and about the 3 ruble. Tzemach Tzedek called in his son and realized this is the works of his son. He says, Shmuel, you know this man? He says, yeah, I saw him a few days ago. And he told me of his problem. And why did you ask him for 3 ruble? Oh, because I was walking in one of the streets of Lubavitch and I heard someone crying. I went into the house and it was a kala. And she was afraid that the chassan is going to call off the shidduch because she didn't have enough money to buy a talis for him. And I asked how much money is missing. And they said 3 ruble. So I went to this chassid and I got 3 ruble from him and I gave it to her so she could get married. Aha. And how did you make the pots weigh more? Shmulik? Oh, very simple. I took the chas and kala who are going to get married b'schus the 3 ruble, and I put the chas and kala into the pots, and I made it weigh more. That's the end of the story. Chatchila Riber. We should go to Chatchila Riber, Haris von Galus, rein to the Geula with the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, take of me at Mamish. Seid gesund und a guten Shabbos.